their frame
Well, they're
of
not
understanding.
revolting against Islam. They're revolting against Homanism. This is properly insane, apocalyptic stuff. A woman who's going to be executed can be raped beforehand in order that she doesn't go to heaven. He describes all these people dying for the revolution and says they're dying for love. And Falaci says, it is hate, Ayatollah, it is hate. And in the satanic verses of Salman Rushdie, there's legions of young Iranians walking into the jaws of the massive Ayatollah's mouth as it chomps down on them.
Is Islam a religion of peace? Take a look at this great new clip from Douglas Murray on a podcast. We'll watch what he has to say, and then we'll talk about it. But first, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Check this out.
Whenever there was a terrorist attack done in the name of Islam, that was what all politicians said. They said, Islam is a religion of peace. And I don't think it's solely a religion of war by any means, and there's plenty of peaceful stuff in it, but there's also a lot of war stuff in it. And I just don't like the lies. The vast illiteracy in our societies about religion in general, by the way, but was extraordinary. The ignorance, therefore, of a foreign religion, which has not historically had much place in Britain. I mean, it just hasn't. Islam meant that people are even more ignorant. I mean, who among our governing class knows anything about abrogation and Iranians didn't understand the nature of the Ayatollah's threat in 1979. And what a mistake that was, to underestimate what Khomeini really intended. When it happens in our own countries, but I come back to this thing, that of all of the ways you can deal with that, my preference always was to be highly specific on identifying the threat, zapping the threat, but at the same time, keeping on going and cherishing what is ours. And instead, because people don't listen, everything was pushed down like this, and everything became shallow and so wide as to be useless.
Related to this, or at least I think it's related to this, why do you think that the mainstream media have been so silent on what is happening in Iran? I saw a fantastic tweet the other day that explained it as I was wondering, why is it that they're being so silent? And this woman explained that it's because the liberal metropolitan elite types in the media cannot conceptualize that people could possibly be revolting against Islam. That this is just something that is so anathema to them, so outside of their frame of understanding.
Well, they're not revolting against Islam. They're revolting against Homanism. Most people in Iran will remain Muslim after a revolution as they were before. But the thing for them, is the curse of Iran since '79 has been Homanism. I think that many people in the West have no concept of what I mean when I'm describing Homanism. I mean, we all had a glimpse of it from 1989 with the Ayatollah's fatwa on the British novelist Salman Rushdie for writing the satanic verses. That should have been a pretty early lesson, which again, we sort of we internalized the fatwa instead of just resisting it. We sort of accepted it. But I think that again, I mean, if we're so ignorant about ourselves as a country, how could we possibly understand a form of government which, for instance, in Khomeini's own I mean, if you read the Blue Book of Khomeini, which is quite hard to get, but if you read it as I have, this is properly insane, apocalyptic stuff. I mean, the sort of, a woman who's going to be executed can be raped beforehand in order that she doesn't go to heaven. No, I mean, can we imagine? Can our women's minister even imagine that there is a society on earth where that happens? where rape is endorsed by the government as a form of moral correction before execution. Never mind once you get to the violence and the demand that people give up their lives for hate. And again, you know, I mean, by the way, there's a brilliant passage in the Satanic Verses of Salman Rushdie about the Ayatollah, which I wish people read more, which is actually lifted from an interview. I assume that, he never said this, but I assume it's lifted from the great Oriana Fallaci's interview with Khomeini, about the only Western journalist who got an in-depth interview with Khomeini in 1979. She says at one point in the interview, brilliant interview that she was, you know, he describes all these people dying for the revolution and says they're dying for love. And Fallaci says, it is hate, Ayatollah, it is hate. And in the Satanic Verses of Salman Rushdie, there's legions of young Iranians walking into the jaws of the massive Ayatollah's mouth as it chomps down on them. No, there's no understanding of this.
I think we've come to accept from the left. I mean, given the fact that the left actually helped the Islamists take over in Iran, and ironically, when the left do come out effectively in support of the Ayatollahs, they do so forgetting that all of their comrades were then very quickly slaughtered.
Don't know if they forget that. The problem for the Iranian diaspora, as I understand, I mean, the problem was that the left.
Well, I mean the Western left.
Well, yes. What often happens, I mean, what happens internally is similar to what happened in Austria in '38. Is that a political side is divided. In the case of Iran, the left was divided: trade unionists, Marxists, anti-monarchists, leftists, and so on. And
I wonder what you think of that debate, and actually whether, I know obviously when you wrote about the woke left, you described it as a train pulling into the platform and then steaming right through and crashing through the station. I wonder whether perhaps you see that now happening on the right, because I think that the concerns, I think, are very fair. I think many British people want the white British population to remain a majority in their own country, and I imagine that you would think that that's a very fair demand. But it's very difficult to justify that in terms that don't get accused of being racist. But at the same time, I think, I mean, you and I would, I'm sure, agree on this, that we wouldn't like, for example, our good friend Andy No to be deported for not having any English ancestry. So I just wonder what you think of that debate and where you stand on those issues.
Well, it just take a sort of 40,000 foot view for a second. I mean, I think would pretty much be deemed undesirable for any country to have its population fundamentally changed in a course of a few generations. I mean, you know, if Pakistan suddenly, in the course of one person's lifetime, became majority Welsh, I don't think people would. I don't think.
What a thought!
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people would celebrate it particularly. I don't think any of us would say, "Yeah, great, they had it coming. Bring more of the Welsh guys in. Let's screw up the Pakistani society and change it and
force them all to wear daffodils.
Yeah, and sing all the time. I think it would just be weird, and certainly, unless you really hated the country in question, surely not desirable to encourage. So that, I just sort of think that would be the case anywhere. Why is it different with us in the UK, and why are we not meant to even sort of say, "Oh, I'm not quite sure I like that idea"? It's really because we've got caught in something that, again, the New Culture Forum published a book about many years ago, which I contributed a chapter to. I think it was called "A Sorry State," about the sort of idea that there's something uniquely guilty about us, which means we deserve erasure. And I don't agree with that. I think actually, Britain has been a great force for good in the world, much more of a force for good than a force for ill. We have history like everyone. We're here because history happened. But I see no reason why anyone should feel guilt and be told that they don't deserve to exist as a recognizable majority in their country simply because of something historically. So yes, I understand this concern. I'm deeply concerned about it myself. I don't like the idea of Britain disappearing from the world. I think the world would be much worse off.
So is Islam a religion of peace? Well, that question is asked constantly, often shouted rather than explored. And when questions are shouted, truth usually leaves the room. So let's slow down and think carefully. Islam, like Judaism and Christianity, is followed by more than 1 billion people. Most Muslims want what everyone else wants: family, dignity, stability, and meaning. That must be said clearly and must be said first. But saying that doesn't answer the harder question. Why has radicalism emerged so consistently and so violently from within parts of the Islamic world across cultures, across continents, and over decades? Iran is not an exception, it's an example. Iran is not ruled by a rogue gang or a temporary dictator. It's ruled by a religious system built deliberately on clerical authority, enforced by religious law, and justified through sacred texts as they are officially interpreted. The regime does not claim to be corrupting Islam, it claims to be fulfilling it. And that distinction matters. The most dangerous ideas are not those that say, I want power, but those that say, God wants me to have this power. When violence becomes sacred, compromise becomes heresy. What makes Islam more prone to radicalization is not Muslims, it's structure. First, there is the fusion of religion and state. In classical Islamic law, there is no clear separation between spiritual authority and political power. Muhammad was not only a prophet, he was a ruler, he was a judge, he was a military leader. That model, faith and force together, became embedded in the tradition itself. By contrast, Judaism separates kings from prophets, and Christianity famously says, render unto Caesar. Islam never developed that firewall. Second, there is a law that claims divine finality. Sharia is not advisory. It's presented as God's will for society. When law is divine, reform becomes rebellion against heaven itself. That makes moderation fragile and extremism stubborn. Third, there is the doctrine of abrogation. In Islamic theology, later revelations can cancel earlier ones. That means because earlier verses preached patience, while later verses, revealed during military conflict, authorize violence. So extremists argue, with real textual backing, that the harsher verses override the peaceful ones. You may reject that interpretation, but you cannot say that it comes from nowhere. Fourth, there's the absence of a strong culture of internal critique. In Judaism, our argument is sacred. We argue with texts, with teachers, even with God. In much of the Islamic world, questioning fundamental interpretations can cost you your freedom or even your life. Iran imprisons dissidents not because they are violent, but because they think. Now, none of this means Islam is evil. Ideas are not people, but ideas have consequences. When a religion provides a total system, belief, law, politics, and war, it becomes uniquely vulnerable to those who want power in God's name. That's why radical movements keep reappearing, even after military defeat. You can kill fighters, you cannot bomb an idea. And here's the tragedy. The greatest victims of Islamic radicalism are Muslims themselves. Iran's women, its students, its minorities. These are not enemies of faith. They are prisoners of it, as weaponized by the state. So is Islam a religion of peace? Well, the honest answer is this. It contains both peaceful and violent currents. What determines the outcome is which ideas are allowed to rule and which are challenged. Peace does not come from slogans. It comes from limits. Limits on power. Limits on certainty. Limits on those who claim God speaks only through them. And until those limits exist, the world must stop confusing good intentions with hard reality and stop pretending that saying peace is the same as building it. If you like this content overall, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.